Hi. Let's discuss two spiritual phenomena or spiritual architectures of the mind that are detrimental and cast a shadow or filter over one's feelings, attitudes, and perspective. What we can call, or what I will call, internal commands and resolutely held defensive or protective attitudes, both of which enforce certain feelings, attitudes, and perceptions that take a person out of being truly present and recognizing and appreciating what is and how things really are in any unique and specific moment. A defensive or protective attitude is something one uses to say, I'm not going to actually engage with this circumstance or experience or feeling. And it's always an attitude that's actually infused with feelings of anxiety. It's defensive. A person tries to protect themselves from having to experience something that they think they can't stand to experience. Of course, that takes a person out of being present, and any feeling can be experienced and digested if one is not engaged in projecting it to be overwhelming or unconquerable or never-ending. And that is part of what resistance is. It's projection of something as being something not to be experienced. And in projecting something not to be experienced and resisting something, we simply keep it maybe at arm's length, but we keep it in place. And so what it actually accomplishes is the opposite of what it's intended to accomplish. It doesn't get rid of anything. It holds it right there in suspension. And something that's somewhat similar is what you could call an internal command. An internal command says, this is how to be, this is what to do, this is what not to do this, don't do that, engage in this, don't engage in that. The difference between that and a resolutely held protective attitude is that a resolutely held protective attitude is sort of a statement with an explanation or justification generally built into it, like I can't let this happen to me, or all women are untrustworthy, or it has a thought or a justification built into it that says, this is why you should protect yourself from this. This is why I need to protect myself from this. As opposed to a command, which is more of the nature of like a parent telling a child, because I said so, that's why. Here's a good way to look at the differences between the two. And both are detrimental. Both are something fixed in place that prevents a person from recognizing what is and being able to have it. But a resolutely held protective attitude would be more like saying, don't cross the street without holding my hand because you could get hit by a car. And a command, to illustrate the difference, would be more like, don't cross the street because I said so. There's no real explanation. There's no given supposed logic to the enforced attitude. They're both enforced attitudes, you could say. But a command is put forth almost just purely with force. Don't do this, do that, don't allow this. It's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. It's not, there's nothing appended to it that says why it has to be that way, Whereas a resolutely held defensive or protective attitude says, for your own good, for my own good, I need to do this. It's kind of got a bit of what appears to be logic built into the idea that one should always hold that attitude that's saying not to actually engage with or experience whatever it may be, but instead to project it to be a certain way. And that's the differences between the two. And because they're different substantially, different mechanically, they're easily resolved in the sessions that I give, but they require different techniques. To process a defensively held protective attitude, the steps involved are to spiritually allow oneself to experience and have digested the anxiety that supports the attitude. Like, I can't go near the water, okay. So then one would process the feeling of fear, apprehension, and or anxiety that supports and is infused into that attitude. You can actually just allow oneself to digest and have any attitude simply by dropping any resistance, being completely effortless, and just welcoming the palpability of the sensations and feelings therein. I talked about that in other videos. Spiritual digestion. It's a very simple and amazing technique. And the thing that sometimes people don't immediately grasp is it's not doing anything. It's the opposite of doing something. It's simply having that which is presenting without coming up with a solution that gets in the way of simply having it, like characterizing it a certain way, deciding to do a certain thing in relation to it. No, just have it. When you fully have that feeling thoroughly, then it no longer presents. It's been digested. I can very easily talk about how to do that, and you can do that from what I just said. But what I find is, when I give sessions, it's done thoroughly. When people do it on their own, you tend to take it to a certain point and say, that's enough, feel better now. And you haven't thoroughly digested that feeling, and to some degree, it can still present. But nevertheless, it's very helpful to do that. That's the first step of handling a resolutely held protective attitude. Other steps include recognizing what it is intended to protect the person from. And essentially, that's experiencing a feeling they're afraid to have to feel. Recognizing that. Processing some of that anticipation of that feeling by having passed through one's mind those moments in their life when they felt like that context, that situation or circumstance was present for them. Just letting that run through their mind, that really helps to take the edge off. And then, having done that, a person can be more present, less inhibited by that attitude, to actually inspect the attitude with the question I ask for, what have the consequences been of maintaining that attitude, holding that in place, instead of just simply being present and recognizing something as unique in the moment, instead of branding it a certain way and holding in place a projection and attitude about it. What have the consequences been of holding that attitude, of maintaining that attitude? And those consequences will include, like, not really allowing oneself to live and be part of life and experience what's really going on. And maintaining a certain fear or anxiety by maintaining that attitude and other things. And once those consequences have been looked at, then I can ask the question, how does maintaining that attitude seem to you now? And one of two things will happen. Either that attitude will now be recognized as silly and detrimental, and the person will be done with it. Or a supporting attitude will arise that says this is why they need to maintain that attitude. And then we would simply go through the same steps over on that underlying attitude until all is resolved and the attitudes now seem silly and they're no longer held in place. Now, how we process away an internal command is different, because an internal command, while also based in a type of fear, it's a much deeper, stronger anxiety. It's much more like panic or terror or shock, generally, because it's such a strong enforcement of, no, this can't be, don't allow this, or do that. Again, it's like a parent saying, do that because I said so. It's it's a creation of essentially pure force. So the way that that's resolved is to have the person create the command exactly as it is. That doesn't mean necessarily to shout it or say it out loud. Most people choose not to in a session, but to generate it exactly as it is. That means exactly the words as they're presenting within you. It means with the exact intention and strength of feeling and type of feeling, exactly as it is. And then having done that, it tends to change a little bit. The words can change, the intention can become less, can change in various ways, and now generate it as it is now, exactly as it is newly presenting in the next moment. Not playing it back like it's a recording. Not repeating things, but generating it, creating it exactly as it is presenting within you in the new moment. And then again, in the next moment, however the words are now, whatever the intention, whatever the force or feeling is, creating that and doing this step newly, each time, again, newly, as it is now presenting a number of times. And what will happen is the command and the strength and the value and the force of it will simply evaporate away. It simply won't be there anymore. And that's how you resolve that. And this is how you tell the difference between the two. One is just a very forceful command, and the other is, this is why I have to be this way about that. And that's pretty much all we need to know about these things for the moment, except I will also add that they're somewhat similar, and it's important if you're going to do this work, if you're somebody I'm mentoring in this work, or you just, freelancing it, doing it from what I'm saying in my videos or whatever. It's important to recognize what those differences are and which one to use. And both of these can come up and get in the way of processing a feeling that, a feeling of fear or anxiety, or resolving to process a false self, an identity, a sort of a false self that a person sometimes takes on that is not the way they really want to be. These things can get in the way of processing those things, but they're really not getting in the way so much as they're making themselves available by emerging through the processing so that these can be processed, so that you can process fully the feeling, attitude, or persona that is supported by that command or that attitude. I fairly recently, over the past year, maybe year and a half, a new recognition, new observation for me has been that, I've been helping people to successfully process away all their layers of identity, of being this way, being that way, this persona, this character. I've been successfully helping people through that for many years. But a new recognition was, you could call a shortcut, more efficient way to approach this, is to recognize when somebody is acting out an identity, that they will be found that they have a resolutely held protective attitude that says they can't let go of that identity. And to directly ask for, address, and process that, it really makes much more efficient the resolving and processing away of that person never finding themselves locked in being in the persona or character of that identity, and thereby acting inappropriately in circumstances, which is very detrimental. We want to be present. We don't want to be some caricature, but we take these on for reasons that in the moment where we think that doing this will help us in how we want to be treated or recognized, regarded by others. But in reality, it doesn't help with that. It creates a false projection of self. And then we're simply not there to be recognized and connected with. That's why we need to process away any and all internal programming that takes away from all we can be, all we can feel, all we can notice, all we can recognize. And all internal programming, all of this is inspired by some fear or anxiety that is as yet undigested and unprocessed, that we're trying to solve, we're trying to cope with in a certain way by creating something in opposition to it, which, as I said, just holds it in place. So underlying all the detrimental attitudes, feelings, and behaviors are fears and anxieties that can, in fact, be digested and processed when we drop the idea that we need to project these things as being too much for us, because they're not. I think that'll do it for this talk. To learn more, to experience the wonderful changes and restoration of self that you can have through therapeutic spiritual counseling, you can reach out to me through the contact page on my website, dexsessions.com. You can also get through me one-on-one training, one-on-one mentoring on how you can do this with others.